All right, so I want to do an update as usual, as well as get into some other news of the day kind of stuff. So getting right into it here, Canada is up to 44,569 cases, with 2,351 dead. Alberta is up at 216 new cases yesterday, so we are down from the last about 4 or 5 days. But again, still relatively high. I would look for the numbers. Like I say, if the numbers continue to trend down this week, I literally see absolutely no reason whatsoever for us to continue this. But again, people like I say, people really don't like to listen. They'd rather bask in their fear mongering, I guess, kind of stuff. We're up to 1,471 recovered, so we have this many cases. But again, this many people are recovered. Not to mention, we're testing like 5,000 people a day. So, given how many people you're testing, you're going to have a lot of new cases. I mean, that would be the equivalent to Ontario testing probably. I mean, Ontario's got to have three, maybe four times the population of Alberta. So that'd be I mean, imagine if they're testing 20,000 people a day. I don't know how many they're testing off the top of my head, but my guess is it isn't 20,000. So like I said, we need to keep testing. And like I said, there's other stuff that I'll get into later on that are in some of the other things I want to talk about. But, it's like I keep mentioning, we've yet to see this get nearly as bad as what it was made out to be when we first got into this. And like I say, it doesn't make any sense that we're continuing with this. Like Alberta, when we still have 73 people dead, and the overwhelming majority of them are from very small I mean, I think about 30 of them are from one nursing home. About what 600 of our cases are from the one Cargill plant. So if we could just isolate certain areas, then it's a very simple solution. And I don't understand why people are so against that. Maybe I like some of it. I think is people are literally just that incompetent. Like I don't mean to be mean, but a lot of people literally are just that incompetent. They literally think that we have to have everything completely closed down, which it technically isn't. But we're calling it everything closed down, or you got to just open everything back up with no restrictions whatsoever. Like that's what these people think. And I keep trying to say there is an in between. We can quarantine old folks' homes. We can give people that are over the age of whatever 50 or 60, whatever age you want to call it, even anyone for that matter, but especially the older people that still work, the option to stay home for the next month or two, or at the very least stock up on masks, on gloves, on any PPE that they need so that they can keep working. This makes no sense what we're doing, and the government clearly has ulterior motives. Even the Alberta government too. Like I mean, if Kenny doesn't come up with a plan to reopen things at some point this week, I'm gonna be really mad. I mean, I already am really mad at them. But if they don't call for, come up with a plan to have things at least mostly reopen within the next month, something similar to what Saskatchewan did, I'm going to be pretty mad. And honestly, I'm going to start harping on them a little bit more too, because they deserve their lion's share of criticism, not from how they've handled it. I think they've handled it better than most provinces, at least, well, better than the ones that have been hit as hard as us. I mean, let's say the four major provinces. Alberta's handled it the best, at least if you look at the numbers. But anyway, let's get into some other stuff here. This is from Tom Quiggin. He says, just a thought, but maybe in the next election, Canadians should vote for a leader/party that works for Canada first, and then the UN, the Islamists, the progressives, and the cultural Marxists last. And again, that's where the Liberal Party is at in Canada. That I mean, China clearly either has dirt on Justin Trudeau, or they're paying him enough. They're paying him. They're bribing him a lot of money. One of the two. My guess is that they're bribing him. I mean, they donated $500,000 to the Trudeau Foundation, I believe. He obviously gets a kickback from that. So, not to mention, they probably do have dirt on him as well. It just might not be that major. I mean, probably pretty much everyone could get dirt on Trudeau if they really, work, any major intelligence of any country. But again, the way we're running things again, and this is the reason for one of the reasons for the big political divide out there nowadays. That The right has conceded a lot of major things that the left wanted them to concede on. I mean, like I always mention too, you look at the left of 10, 20 years ago, they wanted the right to, you know, give in on gay marriage, which they've done, give in on marijuana legalization, which they've done, and not be so gung ho about being against abortion and not be, so pro war. Every one of those things they've conceded on. And not only that, the left is the big pro war, especially if you look in the States right now, party. Um, Most conservatives, I would say, are still against abortion, but they're not, running on that being one of their main points, like they used to do. So that's just something I wanted to mention because Canada is not going to get any better until we can figure this stuff out. This is from Stefan Molyneux. He goes on to say, it's a pandemic, so you can't go for a walk and your children can't play in the park, but hundreds of thousands of foreign workers can pour over the border to take your jobs. Now, I don't think hundreds of thousands are coming over during this pandemic, but there is a very large group of people. I know there's a plane load of people from Mexico. I mean, the border is open for illegal immigration again. So and this is another reason that when having this immigration conversation, we have one side that literally refuses to give an inch from their fringe position, and it is a fringe position because you want open borders is a fringe position that even someone like Bernie Sanders in 2016, a guy who was a socialist, he's always been a socialist, he's been considered way too far to the left for in every election pretty much but this election, and that still was he. I think he's still too far left to get elected, even to this day. He was a guy who was against open borders, but yet most people on the left are pro open borders nowadays, and that's just where we're at. And again, we're not gonna find any common ground. We're not gonna get anywhere. We're not gonna get anywhere better as a country until we can at least be honest about our intentions, because the left is blatantly lying about their intentions, and it's something that really bothers me. This is from Peter Downing. No, this is in regards to the shootings in Nova Scotia. Instead of further political rhetoric about gun control, we need to know how the Nova Scotia killer gained access to a fully marked police vehicle, note the dealer sticker on the front window, and uniform that allowed him to commit mass murder. Now, the first thing I wanted to point out is that funny there's nobody calling for the public to be banned from using the same cars as cops. Like, why not? Because if this guy didn't have a police car, he very well doesn't kill nearly as many people. Nearly as many people. Because, I mean, how many people see someone driving? I mean, who would have known? I mean, the government didn't put out a warning that, hey, there's a guy driving around in a police car killing people. Well, who would have known? So, again, that's the first thing I wanted to point out, too. The other thing is, again, how did he get access to all this kind of stuff? And the fact that the government isn't being open and honest with this kind of stuff, I think just goes to show that it would expose, number one, how incompetent the government is, and number two, I mean, it just goes completely against their agenda too. That they want this agenda that the only reason that this kind of stuff happens is because of loose gun control. There isn't enough gun control, when in reality, this could have been largely prevented. By first of all, I mean, allowing people to have concealed carry would have not prevented it, but it would have prevented a lot of it. If you have someone who shows up at your house wanting to burn your house down, well, if you have a gun, well, you're at least able to have a fighting chance. The other thing too is that, again, how did he get access to this kind of stuff? Again, to me that doesn't make any sense. And like I said, I think the reason why the government is not being more open and honest about it is that it would expose just how, number one, just how easy it is to do something like this. And again, that just goes completely against the agenda. Oh, there's so many mass shootings and we need to ban guns because if we don't, there's going to be more mass shootings. No. Again, Canada is one of the most armed countries in the world per capita. It's just we appear to be very unarmed because we're next to the by far the most armed country in the world, right? Like, if you're a pro hockey player and you compare yourself to Connor McDavid, yeah, you're not going to look very good. But if you compare yourself to the average, men's league player, which is the average player out there, you're really good. So that's kind of the Canada, gun control example. So again, this is something that should be answered to. And again, anyone still proposing gun control after this is just a complete It just goes to show that all they care about is their political agenda. That's all they care about whatsoever. Number one, because we don't know the guns that were used. I don't think it's been confirmed. It definitely was not an assault rifle. I would bet, or even a semi-auto. I would bet a lot of money that it wasn't, because if it was, it would have been all over the news before the bodies were cold. So my guess is that they were illegal handguns would be the most likely thing, but because we know, I think 3 out of the 4 they said, or 2 out of the 3 came from the States, and then the other one they don't know for sure. So again, no amount of gun control would have prevented this, because if we had an outright gun ban, the exact same scenario would have played out. Like literally the exact same scenario. So these people still calling for gun control just goes to show just how ignorant they are, and all they care about is their political agenda. So just wanted to point that out. Last thing here is the thing that I really wanted to talk about. This is from Steven Crowder. Now, he goes on to say the American public needs to know that all new reliable data shows that the virus mortality rate of 0.5 to 0.1%, as low as 0.0015 for healthy people under 60 years old. Irrefutable, then pull them on the shutdown. So, again, this is something that I've been pointing out, is that number one, we haven't, I mean, first of all the updates, all the, the studies, whenever the government updates the numbers, it's consistently getting less and less likely that the mortality rate consistently has been going down. The projections for the amount of people they guess will be infected is consistently going down. Not to mention, too, I'd like to see this, more on this for healthy people under 60 years old. If that's the case, we're talking literally less than 1 in 1,000% chance of dying. So, or sorry, roughly a 1 in 1,000. But why does that make any sense to keep these people quarantined then? If you have a 1 in 1,000% chance of dying, what is the point? What, like, seriously, what is the point? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I keep harping on this, but I'm reading through the social media and seeing on the news and all this kind of crap about how people still are still in this fear mongering BS state where they think that this is still this terrible virus, when in reality it's clearly a slightly worse version of the flu. I mean, the States has flu seasons where I've heard upwards of 80,000 people have died. I think they're still at what, 40, 50,000 people have died. So in my mind, I'm just throwing this out. For to justify the lockdowns, I think that there would have to be at least double, probably upwards of triple the amount of people dying of this, or projected to die, than the flu to justify the lockdown. So we're talking about 200,000, 250,000 people in the States dying. And in Canada, we're at what, 23? I mean, I had the exact number here, 2351. I mean, so let's just say Canada, it's 10 times less. So 8,000 people, 8,000 people a year die from the flu. Again, we're still not even close to that number. Like, not even close to that number. Again, I don't know what the number is in Canada. I'm just saying 10 times less than the States, compared to, we have about 10 times less the population. Again, my guess is that for Canada, we need at least 15, 20,000 people to die of this to make the shutdowns justified, in my mind. Now, that's again my opinion, but I don't see how you can possibly have the opinion that we should completely destroy the economy. I mean, risk far more people dying, and definitely far more people suffering, for something that clearly is not much worse. I mean, if any. I think there's arguments that it could be pretty much the same. Again, I've maintained that it is worse than the flu, this whole time. No, but I don't think it's much worse. And it's just it's a flu where it spreads more, more likely to be infectious, and you're a little bit more likely to die, but not that much likely. Like, and again, the solution to this is blatantly obvious, and I'm really, really not sure why more people don't understand. Now this guy says too, he's like, in the comments here, 1,000 times yes. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one blown away by how easy the solution is. Quarantine the elderly and at high risk. Everyone else move on with their lives. Again, it's such a simple solution. I don't get the hesitation. Now, I understand it a little bit from the government's point of view, that the minute they open things, there will be a second wave no matter what, regardless of whether we stay in lockdown. The government will get blamed, and people will throw it. Oh, you want people to die? How evil are you? You know, all this kind of crap, and it's really stupid. It's really stupid because, like I said, just quarantine the elderly and people at high risk. Even, like I say, give people the option to not go back to work for a month or two if they don't want to. But this is something, the big thing that the left doesn't understand about the right is that people on the right hate the leftist ideology so much because it's the you can't have capitalism within socialism, but you can have socialism within capitalism argument that you can't have. Again, their justification is, oh, a little small percentage of people are suffering, therefore we're justified in making a massive amount of people suffer. And that's the most terribly unethical and immoral thing I think I've ever heard. That people justify that kind of stuff because it isn't justified. You're not justified in doing that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you like to, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email, got linked in the description. Also check out my BitChute channel as well. Again, YouTube gonna ban or shadow ban me at some point, so check me out there as well.